I'm following Haidladay's latest series of videos concerning, roughly concerning solipsism. And I'm having an interesting comment exchange with Trick0171 concerning this. And I've reached an interesting juncture where Trick has said, and I quote, "Assessments about one's life are not done at the direct experience level, but at the memory level." Now, the reason we're actually discussing this is that old, how good are our lives, really? I had a discussion like this with somebody at work yesterday. I have a very unrewarding job. I sit in front of a computer and I play with numbers, and it's a very repetitive job. I'm working a lot of overtime because I'm the single breadwinner. So I was talking to one of my friends who is in a similar situation to me, and I said, it's interesting if you stop and think about this. If you stop and think about what we're doing, conventionally speaking, we're flushing our lives down the toilet, because we basically get up, go to work long hours, excuse me, go home and go to bed, with maybe an hour's recreation in there per day, because we have bills to pay and families to support. Now we're sort of positing the view that, okay, according to contemporary wisdom or conventional wisdom, we're wasting our lives because we have unrewarding jobs that we get very little job satisfaction out of, but and we're also working long hours. That's, say, 15 out of 16 of our waking hours per day, doing things that, at least theoretically, are things we would rather not be doing. The question arises, do we really dislike this that much? Is being at work really that bad, even at a unrewarding job? That question is not quite as easy to answer as one might think. It assumes that you can split life between the good times and the bad times. Now, that's not necessarily true. Or it doesn't hold up to withering scrutiny. If I have a particularly bad day and I come home, the badness of that day at work will come home with me. If I have a particularly bad day at home, the badness from that day will come with me to work. Again, I've been in the trade union movement all my life, and one of the most consistent cases we make is the person has issues at home that have come to work. If they fix the issues at home, they will no longer come to work. It often pans out that way. They sort out whatever the issue is at home, their work performance improves. They commit to do this, the company agrees. Usually, some sort of remedial action takes place. Now, if you have good experience at home, that comes to work with you. If you have a good, stable personal life, chances are you're going to be less of a problem at work in terms of discipline. You're going to have less difficulties in work and in terms of dealing with the drudgery of it all, because you can say to yourself, this is more than worth it. This is a fair exchange. The overall nature of my life is such that I'm essentially doing what I have chosen to do. I'm working 15 out of 16 waking hours out of my own volition. I don't have to do this. In a modern post-industrial society, and almost all of them, if you stop working, something will keep you fed, sheltered, and clothed. I have opted not to do that, even though I have the option of doing that. Why is that? Because my experiences are never one simple thing. The hours of my day are never one simple thing. They all take place in terms of my direct experience of the quality of my life. If I am at work doing an empty, mindless job, and my perception of the world is generally positive, generally speaking, i.e., I'm doing a useless job that grinds me down after a while, but when I stop and think about it, I go, okay, I have the option of walking out the door at any moment and foregoing an income. And I can forego all the goodies that the extra income that I get above subsistence level provides me. In other words, I really nowadays, sort of to quote or paraphrase Epicurus, the things that are necessary are easy to acquire. If I simply want to protect myself from the elements, keep myself from starving, and not walk around naked, it doesn't take an enormous amount of effort. I could even provide for my family in a totally minimalistic way, probably at a part-time job making minimum wage. I would just rent a loft or basement bachelor apartment. We'd all live in there, and I would eat the simplest foods imaginable, and I would simply walk to and from work and buy clothes at a charity. That would work. We could do that. The thing is, nobody in contemporary Canadian civilization or society wants to do that, or at least not very many people want to do that. I want to have a computer. I want to have the internet. I want to have a car. I want to have all this other stuff. That's okay. It's things that I've consciously said I will go after these things, and I will do what is necessary to get them. Therefore, me working 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, is not as horrible as one might think, because I'm consciously aware of what I'm doing. I consciously opt to do this with the knowledge, the full knowledge, that I have a parachute on my back, and I can leave at any given moment. So my direct experience of a job that I may somehow think is unrewarding and repetitive and drudgery might not be what my analytical side says it is. My analytical side says you're spending 15 out of 16 of your waking hours doing something you don't like to do. What does that say about the quality of your life? But my experiential self can't help but think, okay, maybe you're right, analytical side, but why am I able to do this for protracted periods of time? Why don't I get this sort of feeling of colossal ennui? Why don't I get this horrible Sisyphean feeling of doing a stupid job that's unrewarding for years on end, long hours, etc.? Why is it something tells me that this isn't really as horrible as I might think it is? I would assume that it's because I have, as I say, invoked my prohairesis. I am aware that I have the faculty of choice, and I am aware that I can stop this at any moment. I can just say, this job is just no longer rewarding. In fact, it never was rewarding, and I'm flushing my life down the drain. And I just walk out and leave. I have that option any hour of the day to do this. In fact, writ large, I have the option of doing that with my life. I've had enough of my life. Bang. There. Problem solved. The very fact that I can actually do this either means that my addiction to my career and my addiction to all the junk that consumer capitalism gives me is enough to drag me to work every day. I've become some sort of golem who goes to work every day to get his fix of the ring of power. Gets no joy out of it, but I have no choice the power of this addiction to consumer capitalism and the general ways of human civilization have such a powerful hold on me that I cannot imagine ever leaving. But there's the other side of the coin. I know that I can leave whenever I want. I know that I can opt out of all of this whenever I want. I'm not going to face a midlife crisis like some people apparently do, who have bought their nice big house in the burbs with their nice wife and their nice kids and the basketball hoop over the garage and all that sort of thing. I'm not going to wake up one morning and say, what does all this mean? Because I never really believed in it all in the first place. So somebody can't look at my life and say, Andy's really wasting his life, because look what he's doing. He got married, had a kid, and now his mortgage to pay and all these bills to pay, and look at the price that has come with getting what he thinks he wants. They're not in my shoes. They don't know what it is to be me. Now, in that comment that Trick left, assessment about one's life are not done at the direct experience level, but at the memory level. That it is implied that the one can overrule the other. My rational side that says I'm, frittering my life away, spending my time, if I just do a mathematical calculation. My rational side says, Andy, are you sure you want to be doing this? Just think about the big picture. Do a calculus. Sit down with a pencil and say, look at the amount of time you've spent staring at a computer screen, fiddling with numbers in a really pointless, repetitive, Sisyphean job, versus the amount of time that you spend really doing things that move you, i.e. playing with my son, being with my family in general, riding my bicycle, arguing with people over philosophical stuff on the internet, or sitting in a coffee shop, thinking about whatever, the meaning of life. How much of my time do I spend doing that versus the time that I spend commuting to and from work, or dealing with bills or things like that? That's a rational calculus. But a voice inside of me says, it's not so bad. Which voice do I listen to? Which one do I... If I sort of think, okay, I should feel really lousy about my life when I look at my life this way, i.e. the long hours and the pointlessness of my time at work, but I don't feel that way. Why is that? Well, simply because my rational side says I can actually assess, when I step back and I'm clinical about it, I can actually assess the value of my existence rationally and clinically. Value doesn't work that way. You have to actually ask yourself, I would say, in real time, all the time, how do I feel right now? Psychotherapy works that way. I more or less, I guess, thought my way long-term out of a severe depression by thinking this way. Never mind what you think that you think. What do you actually think? Or never mind what you think that you feel. What do you actually feel? In other words, if my rational mind says, look at your life, Andy. Just really take a long, hard, dispassionate look at your life. What are you doing with it? You get up, you go to work, you come home, you bounce your son on your knee, and you go to sleep. But the bouncing your son on your knee takes maybe half an hour. And the rest is work, 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 work. What's going on? Why are you doing this to yourself? You're wasting your life, and not only that, this is a life that isn't really worth living because you spend 15 hours doing stuff that you don't like versus 1 hour versus doing the stuff that you do like. Okay, so either I'll have my existential crisis and say, oh wow, you're right, my life doesn't really mean anything, and I don't really know who I am, and I'm simply going through the motions of life because, instead of living my life is now living me. Instead of living my life, I'm being lived by it. Or am I ultimately in charge of the whole situation? I am. The exit is clearly marked. I can leave whenever I want. It's being in the game but not of the game. It's the difference between what the Eastern view of things calls samsara And in other words, samsara means you're stuck, you're caught in existence itself, and you believe that existence is all that there is, versus riding the tiger, versus what the Indians call yoga, when you are actually at one with your experiences in real time. It's often referred to as living in the eternal present, because there is only the eternal present. Now, how do you do that? Well, first of all, you have to understand that you're not operating according to, you have to sort of say that you're operating in real time with two epistemologies. There's the experiential epistemology, the first person, and then there's the second person, or third person even, analytical epistemology. When I'm looking at my own life from the driver's seat, that's a first person epistemology. That's what I consider my real epistemology, or at least my primary one. My first person, I exist. Premise one, which I don't think is really a premise, even if I don't even know what existence is, even if I'm not quite sure what I-ness is, something is perceiving, something is conscious, whatever that is. Even before I know what existence is, I know that that is. Two, I know that whatever I am also has experiences. I don't know how accurate the experiences are, and I don't know whether or not they're reflective of anything outside of what I am, the brain in the vat problem. But the thing is, the brain in the vat isn't really as big of a problem as you might think, because of the couple of other things that come along. These experiences I place value on. I can place value on, for example, I'm sitting at my computer staring at the screen going, okay, how do I really feel doing this right now? Do I really want to walk out that door right now and end all of this, because this is a waste of a life? How do I really see this? Because my first person experience is about what I really assess. The second person experience is, what does your analytical side, or your theoretical side, or your idealistic side think? The idealistic side is outside of the first person experience. It's an abstraction. It's about a world outside of that which actually is. That's the side that says, look at your real life, step out of yourself and look at yourself from a second or third person point of view. You're working 15 hours a day. You have 1 hour a day to be with your family. The other 8 hours you're sleeping or commuting or something like this, doing something you don't want to do. Look at your damn life. Look at it realistically. The problem is my analytical side isn't equipped to do that, because value comes at the experiential level. It comes at the first person, in the first person perspective. Only my first person perspective understands the actual value of each individual experience. Not my analytical level. Not, in other words, my memories. Because my memories are a stored record of experience. They're not the experiences themselves. They're a stored record of an experience. Trick already has established that the direct experience is more reliable than a second-hand experience, as it were, an intersubjective experience. So my analytical side does not necessarily have an accurate grasp of what my experiential point of view, my experiential side, is actually experiencing. Because in order to be analytical at all, it has to step out of the experiential. It almost strikes me as though there's a never the twain shall meet thing going on, and you have to more or less balance the two. Because my analytical side also says, you might not want to walk out that door because there are consequences. So I'm sitting there in my cubicle at work, just your stereotypical office rat hole with the dull pale green partitions and all that sort of thing. And I'm going, what the hell am I doing here? That's it, I'm leaving. My analytical side says, are you sure you want to do that? Well, my experiential side certainly does. So which do I act on? Well, my analytical side says, watch what you're doing, because you might make a decision that you might not like. My experiential has to actually have that strength to get through the periods where I'm not really enjoying what I'm doing, because my experiential side doesn't really grasp what my analytical side is saying. Now, you talk like this, and you start to sound like you're talking about somebody with multiple personalities. Not necessarily. You don't have different personalities, you just have different levels of perception. You have different levels of self-analysis. One is the experiential, the other is the analytical. You have to, I would say, to be a well-rounded person or a balanced human being, you have to balance the two. You can't do a second-person or third-person analysis of your own experiences, because by very nature that's not experiential anymore, and that's not as reliable as the direct experience itself. So again, I said the trick was raising a fundamentally lunatic point here by saying, as it is often implied, that somebody else can tell me the value of my experiences and have a better grasp of my experiential existence than I can. It's the same thing as my analytical side, right? Somebody is looking from the outside at my life and saying, your life really sucks, whereas my experiential side doesn't really understand this. But at the same time, when my experiential side, my life really sucks, my rational side will say, wait a minute, how come you didn't feel that way yesterday? So it's not a question of one overruling the other. It's not that the experiential is better than the analytical. It's not as though the first person perspective is better than the second person or third person, or vice versa, that the third person or second person is better than the first person level of perception. I think they need to be balanced. That's part of riding the tiger, as opposed to being ridden by the tiger. You're riding the tiger instead of being chased by it, I suppose. The fundamental disagreement seems to be that some people believe that the analytical side can trump the experiential side. Or, I suppose, vice versa. The experiential can trump the analytical side. I come across this when I'm discussing religion with a lot of people. Well, I know that all your arguments make perfect sense, but I feel something and I feel what I feel. Therefore, my intellect is wrong, because the feeling is obviously so fundamental to what I am that something must be actually wrong here, so my intellect is wrong. I don't feel that way at all. I say your intellect is just a different way of perceiving things, or a different way of being, I guess, or a different point of view than the experiential. Neither one is wrong. They need to be balanced, the one against the other. And I don't think that you can really say one is superior to the other. When you're talking about the actual value of your experiences, i.e., am I suffering, or am I in a state of ataraxia, which is, the Greek word for well-being, general sense of well-being, and things are okay and above just, an equilibrium in terms of how I actually feel. My analytical side can't tell me that. It can only say, well, if we take a bunch of givens saying that a person who's having a massage is in a greater state of ataraxia than a person who is swimming through ice water, then it's almost certain that this person is where they prefer to be when they're getting the massage versus being in a pool of ice water. That's a big if, though, because there may be extenuating circumstances. And there always are, of course, with the simple formula, no pain, no gain. I'm willing to do this because the return for me is greater than what my intellect would think it is. But who gets to judge that? Do I get to judge that, or does somebody else get to judge that? Who gets to evaluate the value of my own experiences, to tell me whether or not I'm suffering, or whether or not I'm in a state of ataraxia? Who gets to do that? Does one side have the final, decisive say there? I would say no. You need to balance the two off. But we're talking about now, and I see this in the solipsism debate, and I see it in Hythloday, and I even see it in Mendham's latest videos. We're discussing whether the first person or the second and third person view of things should get primacy. I'm saying neither will get primacy, if we're actually realistic about what experience and what quality of life and what value in existence really is. Each one of them is in its own sense the correct view of things, but only in terms of differing views of the same ultimate thing, my existence. In some ways, my life is worth living. In some ways, it isn't. Who has the final say?